Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Yasmin. I'm a 23-year-old single mom to my three daughters, Laela, Analia, and Millie-Isla. Today, I'm going to be sharing with you guys the full storyline of how I became a single mom at 16, all the way up to now being a 23-year-old single mom of 3. This summer will mark 6 years of me doing YouTube, which is crazy. I started my YouTube channel back after I had my first daughter, Laela. Since then, I've been vlogging and sharing a lot of my life here on my YouTube channel and also on my other platforms like Instagram and TikTok, which I'll have linked down below. I feel like a lot has happened in my life since I started my YouTube channel, and a lot of times people will come on saying that they've missed a few chapters. Especially in the last year or so, things have been changing a lot because I went through the breakup and became a single mom. So for those of you guys who have been following for a long time, you probably know most of this story. But I wanted to do a full story and fill in the missing pieces that I might not have shared about before and just give kind of an updated story time on my whole life. So to start off, just a little bit of background on my childhood, which I've also shared a lot about on my channel before. I was born in 2001. I grew up in Maryland outside of DC in Greenbelt. My mom was also pretty young when she had me. She was about to be 19 when I was born. I won't go too much into the details of my childhood, but my mom was also a single mom and my grandma also pretty much raised me. For a few years of my childhood, we lived out in California when my mom met her first husband. My mom and stepdad are addicts. That's been something that's been pretty traumatizing and impactful on my life. Living in California for a couple of years was awesome. My mom did inherit money, so I went to a very nice school. I loved my school there. We had a nice place there, but there was a lot of violence and chaos in the home for that part of my childhood. However, I did start to take on my passion for music living out there because her husband was a musician and recorded a lot of his own music, and I started learning how to play guitar, and that's kind of where I picked up my passion for music. So I am very grateful for that. When we were living out there, my mom had my sister when I was 9.5 years old. And then when she was about 6 months old, when I was around 10, we moved back to Maryland to my grandma's house and lived there for the rest of my childhood until I left home when I was 16. But when we moved back, my mom eventually met a new boyfriend and ended up having another daughter who is my second little sister, Ellie. So they're 9.5 and about 11 years younger than me. So they're like about 2 years apart. When I was 14, right before I started high school, my cousin, who I've also shared a lot about on my YouTube channel, was diagnosed with leukemia and died the summer before high school, which was also very impactful on my life and was very, very hard to go through as a teenager. She was only 2 months older than me. She was in the room when I was born. Yeah, she was my best friend growing up, and I lost her to cancer when we were 14. I feel like that's important for my story because I feel like everything that I do in my life is for her sometimes, or at least it just gives me more of a sense of like purpose and wanting to like make her proud. I love sharing about her with my kids. My kids call her Aunt Juliana. So that was a really hard transition into high school. Once high school started, after that, 9th grade, I was on varsity soccer. I started dating this boy who was really nice. Things were going really well for me, I guess. Me and this guy traveled together. I was starting to like learn more about myself and just was growing up. And then my next year of high school, 10th grade, is when things all started to hit me and go downhill. I started partying, I started throwing parties, I started being involved with bad guys. I started smoking weed, which was fine, but at my age I feel like it was a little bit excessive. I started to understand more about my mom's problems and how it was affecting my life, and I was just really depressed and a mess. I blamed myself for a long time for how I acted when I was a young teenager, but looking back, I was a child and I didn't really have anyone guiding me in the right direction because my grandma was working and also basically raising my two little sisters who were like very young at the time, and my mom was and is an addict. So she was just kind of off doing her own thing and I was doing whatever I wanted. Finally things all started to pile up and I had this breakdown. I reached out to my aunt who I was pretty close with and asked her if I could move in with her in Delaware, and she was confused because she knew that I was never like a dramatic kid, I guess, and I always kind of like hid my emotions about things and would just like go party and whatever. So when I like reached out to her, obviously like really struggling, she reached out to my grandma and then found out that these things had been happening to me. At this specific time, I had been horribly taken advantage of by some boys, and I feel like that was kind of the final straw that broke me. So my aunt found out and basically came and rescued me. She came out and picked me up and talked to my school, pulled me out of school for the rest of the school year, the end of 10th grade, and I moved in with her. I literally just disappeared and ran away. It was really sad leaving my little sisters, especially because my grandma was the one taking care of them and my mom was so deep in her addiction, she wasn't really being a mom to them. So leaving did suck, but I had to kind of save myself. I moved from my home outside of DC in Maryland, and I moved about 2 hours away to where I live now in Delaware, by the beach. We lived about like 5-10 minutes from the beach, and it was so exciting to move here, get to live with my aunt and kind of get away from my old life. I took classes to be a lifeguard, just kind of got to spend some time with my cousins and reflect on my life and realized that wasn't what I wanted for myself. But I kind of later came to realize I couldn't just run away from my trauma, and I was far too young to understand how to like address it and cope with it. Anyways, I met a boy and I started dating this guy and going to parties around here, meeting kids around here, and basically I would party with this guy and we were dating. But he was kind of like a mysterious bad boy kind of guy, and I thought he was awesome and really liked him. I was 16. I guess kind of started to realize as our relationship went on that he wasn't like a great guy for me to be with. He was just kind of always like involved in bad stuff and getting into bad situations and getting into trouble. I decided to stay living with my aunt and I started school at the high school here. My boyfriend at the time went to a different high school and he was a grade ahead of me, so I was starting my junior year, he was starting his senior year. I was kind of starting to try to like end things with him when I realized that I didn't really want to be with this guy and my family didn't really like him. When I started to break up with him, he just like wasn't having it. He started showing up at my school to try to find me, and it became very obsessive, stalkerish, harassing, I guess. Now, this whole time I wasn't on birth control, and finally, I think it was like September or October of the beginning of my junior year, right when I finally ended things with this guy, I missed my period. I started to think maybe I was pregnant. Right away when I missed it, I kind of knew because my cycle's always been really regular. So I started taking tests. Now looking back, the tests were definitely positive, but I didn't really know that like a faint line meant that it was positive. I thought that it had to be like 2 really solid lines, so maybe I was just in denial. But I eventually went to my school nurse, or like the wellness center, which is also where you can go to get birth control. And at that time, before I really like knew I was pregnant, I decided then that I was going to start taking birth control. Obviously I never did because I was pregnant. And I asked them if they could give me a pregnancy test. So at school I got a pregnancy test and found out that I was pregnant. So I went to my boyfriend at the time and told him that I was pregnant, and he told me that he was hoping I would get pregnant, or like he was trying to get me pregnant because he thought that maybe then I wouldn't leave him. At the time, I did not think that having a child was even an option for me, so my immediate thought was just that I was going to be getting an abortion. I was terrified, obviously. It was crazy. I never really thought that that would happen to me. I told my aunt that I was pregnant. and was telling some of my friends about it, and my aunt surprisingly was really supportive of whatever I wanted to do and told me that she would help me if I wanted to have the baby. Told me about friends that she had that had gotten abortions and really regretted it. Yeah, basically she was just ready to support me if I wanted to have this baby and support me through finishing high school and going to college and whatever I needed. I also had a friend at the time who had ended one of her pregnancies and really regretted it, and she shared her story with me, and it kind of just encouraged me to go through with the pregnancy. And now I have Laela, and I am so grateful for all of the little things that led to me becoming a mom. Even though it's obviously not the ideal scenario for becoming a mom or the ideal age, I'm obviously so grateful and don't know what I'd do without Laela or any of my girls. At this time, I am at this new high school, deciding I'm having this baby, and I'm kind of trying to make it work with my ex-boyfriend. Unfortunately, the timing of this was kind of rough because my family that I was living with had to leave town for a month, and we didn't have a place because we were in between rentals. So for about a month, I had to kind of stay with friends, and during this month, I started getting really bad morning sickness, and it was just kind of a crazy time for me because I just found out I'm pregnant. I'm at a new school and now I'm sick. So I was staying with Laela's dad for a few weeks, and that's when I kind of really realized he was going down a bad path, and if I'm having this baby, I can't be with him. I asked a friend if I could stay with her, and I stayed with a friend for a little bit, and I really finally ended things with him. It was extremely chaotic, and the police got involved. He was saying really concerning things because I was ending things with him, but we finally broke up. Then I stayed with friends for a little, and my aunt came back and I stayed with them and spent my pregnancy with my aunt and my cousins. I left school to do homeschooling, and I did like classes online and some homeschooling stuff with my aunt because she stayed home and homeschooled her kids as well. My pregnancy was pretty hard. It was kind of lonely. I felt like really weird hanging out with my other friends my age when I was pregnant, and I just felt so like self-conscious about my body changing. It was kind of hard and lonely. And I also didn't have that many friends in the area yet because I had just moved there and just started school. I was working at this trampoline park, and one of my best friends worked there with me, so I had her. That pregnancy felt like it lasted forever, and of course it was scary because I just didn't know what it was going to be like to have a baby and be a mom, and I just had no clue what my future was going to be like. Meanwhile, everyone my age is starting to plan what they're going to do for college, and I really didn't want to let go of the idea of like going to college. It was also technically a high-risk pregnancy. Laela was really small. She had something called intrauterine growth restriction. My aunt had to drive me to appointments like an hour and a half away twice a week to go to a better hospital for more like in-depth ultrasounds twice a week. So that was also a lot for like a first pregnancy. And then that was also scary knowing that there was like something like wrong with my baby, even though she was fine. She was just really small, so they had to like keep making sure she was growing fine. That was also scary. I'd be up all night like stressing about it and like researching what was wrong with her, which just didn't help. I'm so grateful that I had my family supporting me. I made it through that pregnancy and finished school and all of that. A few weeks before Laela was born, we moved into another place, which is actually in the neighborhood that my grandma and sisters live in now, which is super like full circle, and then also was the same neighborhood we lived in when I first moved there. And yeah, we've lived in that neighborhood in different places so many times, and I love that neighborhood. We moved into a new place there, and then a few weeks later I had Laela, which was also crazy because I just really didn't know what to expect. So I was in labor for a while before I even realized I was in labor, and I've always had a pretty high pain tolerance, so everyone just told me like, oh, you'll know when you're in labor, but I did not know. My water broke at home, and we rushed to the hospital at like 1 in the morning. My grandma and my aunt came with me, and at this point I was 17. I wasn't really in contact much with her dad. We had messaged a few times during my pregnancy, and I tried to get him to come to some appointments. He would never show up, and I'd be disappointed. I knew that I did really want him to at least like try to be in her life. I never asked for anything from him. I never asked for child support or like anything. I just wanted him to see her. I also didn't get an epidural or anything when I gave birth to her because she came so quick, and I'm also really glad that that happened that way because then I didn't feel like I needed it with my other deliveries. Yeah, that was great. experience too, getting to just have a natural birth my first time around when I wasn't even planning to do that. I brought Laela home and I absolutely loved being a mom, and I spent my whole pregnancy like kind of fearing the unknown of what motherhood would be like, and it was so like relieving that it just came naturally and intuitively, and I loved it. And it was definitely hard, and learning to breastfeed when I was 17 was like pretty hard, but we did it, and it was probably just like the most magical summer ever. My first summer as a mom, it was like the best time of my life. I like loved it so much, and I like had no clue that I was gonna love being a mom so much. And it also like gave me this new perspective on my problems with my own mom. Layla's dad came to visit twice when she was a newborn. He just came for like an hour and like got to hold her and see her, and he brought like his grandma and his dad. Then that was like pretty much it for that whole summer. I was hearing from people that he was just still kind of going down a really bad path, so that was pretty sad, and I just kind of didn't know what to expect, if I was ever gonna like be in a relationship again, or like if I'd ever be able to date anyone, having a kid and all of that. And yeah, so that was a lot to like think about. That summer I went on a trip with my family to the Outer Banks, and I had been posting about having a daughter, and everyone from like my hometown and just like people that knew me but didn't know that I was having a baby were kind of shocked. I never really shared about my pregnancy on like my Instagram or anything, and everyone was kind of like, whoa, like what's going on? So I posted a video on YouTube explaining the story, more for just like the people that I knew that were all like asking about what was going on. And that video ended up kind of blowing up, and then I realized I loved like making videos with my daughter just about like being a young mom and like capturing our lives, and I literally just never stopped. And that's how I started doing YouTube. After that summer, I was going to start going back to school again to finish off high school. It was my senior year. We moved back into our home that we were in for the majority of my pregnancy with Laela, which was like also right by the beach, which was really nice. Rentals around here are a lot of the times are for either like the summer, because we're like in a beach town, or for like the off season, which is why we kind of moved around a lot. We moved back into this place, and because of the way that my school worked, I was able to only go to school every other day. A lot of seniors did half days, but because I had Laela, they were super accommodating and let me do full days every other day. The days that I was in school, my aunt would have her. I would pump at school, so she would take some breast milk and then formula eventually. Anyway, so I was starting school. I felt more like myself again, and I could like wear normal clothes again, and I felt like just a normal high schooler again, just with the baby. And all of my friends were so like accepting of like Laela, and it just was a great time because I felt like my life didn't end because I became a mom when I was 16. And also I kept doing my YouTube channel, and it kept growing, and that was so exciting. I got to the point that I started making money from my YouTube channel at the beginning of my senior year, and it was like the craziest thing ever in the world to me. At the same time that I'm like starting to just like have friends in a normal life again and be in school again, I met Logan. We already knew each other from the year before, and we actually ran into each other that summer when Laela was like 10 days old. We ran into each other at the boardwalk, and he was like super excited to meet my baby. And then we had a class together at the beginning of senior year and reconnected, and we kind of just had the same friend group, and we ended up falling in love and dating. At this time, Layla's biological dad also had had his third out of 4 visits in her life with her. And at this time I had kind of just started like seeing Logan, and Logan and some of my friends were like over, and he came to see Laela, and he was super disrespectful to Logan. And that was, yeah, the last time he saw her, she was about 4 months old, until one more time when she was 2, but we'll get to that. When I met Logan, and it was kind of just like this crazy thing, because obviously all of his friends are like, oh my god, like you're dating this girl with a kid, and he was just like really accepting of me having Laela. His family was really accepting. His mom was also really young when she had Logan. She also had stepped in for her now husband's son. He was a single dad, I believe, and she kind of like stepped in as a mom to him, so they kind of like had similar stories, which is interesting. So we started dating, and he told me pretty early on that he was gonna stick around for me and Laela, and that just felt so good and crazy to me that somebody still wanted to date me and I had a baby. So that was the start of that. Now looking back, and I love Logan and will always love Logan and everything, but now looking back, like knowing now what I want for myself in my life, there was totally things, like we were still really young and we were still kids, but there was totally things that I should have recognized as like things that I maybe don't want in a long-term partner. But at the time I was so just like in love and like he was so accepting of us that I didn't really think about these things. I don't know if that makes sense. My family was moving at the time. My cousins were decided that they were going to be moving that spring or summer coming up. Now that I had been making money from my YouTube channel, I decided I was going to get my own place that spring. So as soon as I turned 18 at the beginning of 2019, I started renting my own place. At this point, my YouTube channel was taking off and I started traveling with Laela and meeting other like YouTube moms. Logan moved in with me. Now at the time we were in high school and it was like, wow, like it was like crazy that like we had our own house. So we'd have friends over all the time. It was so fun. My friends would come over and like hang out with me and Laela and like we're so involved in her life. It was literally like a high school friend group was raising Laela. And Laela gets like so emotional talking about it or like watching the videos of all of us like together with her all the time. They're like her aunts and uncles like forever. And at the beginning, I think it was about March or April of 2019, right when me and Logan got a place together, I got off of birth control and we kind of both like decided that like we were going to be safe, but we're accepting of the idea that like I'm not on birth control and there's a chance that I get pregnant. But I got pregnant right away with Analia after I got off birth control. So it happened a lot faster than we thought it would. So at this point, we were living together and now he wasn't just my boyfriend helping me raise my daughter. We were gonna be having our own baby together. So things kind of started to get real. And we were both excited, but it was also like crazy. We were still in high school. We hadn't finished senior year yet. We were about to be graduating. We had prom coming up. Logan was still playing baseball for the school. I got very sick with Analia with my pregnancy with her. And that was pretty hard. I remember like my friends from school would come and like bring me chicken soup and like help take care of me because Logan was so busy with baseball senior year, and he also, I think, went on a trip with his baseball team to Kauai right around when I had first found out I was pregnant with Analia. I just remember being like home and like throwing up, couldn't eat anything, and like had a toddler. And also at this time my family was moving away, so now I was just kind of like leaning on the support of like the community that we had there and like Logan and his family and our friends. Because like I said, things started to get real in our relationship. That's when there started to like, you know, be more issues that we had to address because it was like, all right, we're doing life together now. Problems in our relationship were just heavier and more serious because of that. And also at the time I was the one supporting us and with like my YouTube channel and everything, and I asked Logan to like stay home with us and, you know, just do YouTube together. So we graduated and did prom pregnant. All of our friends were kind of starting to like go away to college, and things kind of just became really different, and we were just starting a very different life than like all of the other 18-year-olds around us. During my pregnancy with Analia at the beginning, my mom also has always been an addict, and her boyfriend overdosed. We tried to get her into rehab, so this all happened like when I was 18 in the beginning of that pregnancy. So my sisters ended up moving in with me that summer. You know, we tried to get my mom to go to rehab. She didn't really go. I think she went in for like 2 days and then left. But yeah, so for part of my pregnancy, my sisters were also living with us, and that's one thing that Logan was always so supportive of, was like anything that me and my family needed, he was ready to help with. And again, that was also a lot for us to be taking on at our age. But all I ever wanted was to, like, for my little sisters and my grandma to have a good life despite my mom and her problems. With this new life that I like had been creating for myself, I felt like I just wanted to help as much as I could. They only really stayed with me for like part of that summer. Then towards the end of my pregnancy with Anna, I ended up signing with a management company, which I am also so grateful that that happened because it has made my life so much easier. I'm able to focus on being a mom and like making the content that I love, and then I have a team of people that help me with all of the rest of the behind the scenes stuff. So I'm so grateful that I found them. I love you guys so much. So I've been with them since then. So we had Analia December of 2019. Logan and our best friend Autumn came with when she was born. Her and Laela are like 18 months apart, so Laela was still super young when she was born. We only had like a few months left on our lease for like that place that I had been renting. So right at the beginning of 2020, we kind of started trying to think about what we were going to do after our lease was up, whether we would renew it, move somewhere else, like what we wanted to do. And then beginning of 2020 was also the start of the pandemic and all of like the lockdowns and everything. At this time, when school shut down, my sisters moved back in with us again because they were doing school from home and my grandma was working. So then I had Laela, my newborn Analia, and then my sisters living with us doing homeschooling for a little while. When our lease for that place was up, which was March of 2020, we found like a short-term rental for the time being, and it was the same house that I spent most of my pregnancy in with Laela, and then that we moved back into like after Laela was born for my senior year. So that place was up for rent again because my aunt and uncle had moved out of state for his job, like I had been saying. And I decided not to move with them because I had just kind of started my life in Delaware and had started dating Logan, and I just like wanted to stay there. So that place was up for rent for just like a short-term rental before like their summer rental season started. So we rented that place for like a few months, and my sisters also lived there with us. And then we decided we were going to move to Hawaii. Which, now thinking back, I don't even really know how we just decided on that because I had never been to Kauai. Logan had been for baseball, and I did know a girl that lived out there, and I knew my friend Gabby had like talked about moving out there. So just randomly, we were like, let's just go. So we put all of our stuff in storage, packed up a couple suitcases, bought one-way tickets, found an Airbnb rental that was like a long-term rental, and prices were also like way different then because of like the pandemic and everything. So we got there and we had to quarantine for 2 weeks, and then we spent about 6 months on Kauai, which was incredible, magical, like experience of a lifetime, and I totally see myself moving back there. Laela still to this day talks about her Hawaii home. She turned 2 in our place there. It was seriously just like incredible. But I feel like Logan and I still like, our relationship was always something that was like almost on a back burner because we were so focused on like our kids and the YouTube channel, and like we both have so much like childhood trauma, and we didn't know what we were doing. Like we didn't know much about having like a healthy marriage, basically. Like we weren't married, but we were raising kids together, and things just got serious really quickly. So we did have problems, I guess, a little bit in Hawaii, and we did feel kind of isolated then at that point too because all of our friends were back home and we just moved to this new place alone together. And as much as it was like an insanely beautiful experience, problems in our relationship continued to come to the surface. But Hawaii was so beautiful, and especially being on Kauai, and also at the time where like people couldn't really travel there because, you know, you had to like quarantine for 2 weeks. There wasn't a whole lot of people there, and we just got to like hang out at the beach with a ton of other young families. There was so many other young families, so it felt like we fit in there and we're so accepted there. My best friend Gabby moved to Kauai around the same time that we did. So she was literally like our next door neighbor, which was also completely coincidental. So yeah, we would literally just surf and go to the farmers markets and hang out at the beach with other young families, play my ukulele, go see waterfalls. Having 2 really young kids did make it a little bit hard to like do more things that we probably like would have wanted to do. But I feel like I felt stressed out a lot of the time because organizing and like doing everything for the YouTube channel was kind of like on me, and Logan was kind of more of the role of like a stay-at-home parent, which I don't really think is what he wanted. And figuring out like the dynamic was always kind of a struggle, and we never really figured that out fully. We just made it work for as long as possible, which obviously ended up getting to the point that I just wanted to do it on my own, which is where I'm at now. And then also at this point, we still weren't engaged, which was something that made me really sad, and I was like, why? We have a kid together, like he should have proposed by now. But anyway, so then we come back home September of that year to come visit family and for Logan's birthday. Well, it was for his birthday, but I didn't know that he was also planning to propose to me back here at home. But we got engaged. I started making music at this point too because I reconnected with a friend from high school who had started making music and realized that I like really wanted to do that also. And on this trip back home, I heard from Layla's dad again for the first time in a while. He said, like, I see you guys are back home. I'd love to see Laela. He came and visited her, and he also ended up asking if his girlfriend could come to visit. I said no because I didn't know this girl. He hadn't seen her for a long time, and it just didn't really feel right to me. Like, it felt like he just wanted to like show off his kid that he wasn't even involved with to his new girlfriend. Later down the line, I find out that this girl was really sweet, and she reached out to me and kind of shared her story with me about their relationship, and that she had a really similar experience with him that I did, and she didn't even really know about me or know that he had a kid when she first got involved with him. And yeah, her story was pretty crazy. And then I also, just to bring back Layla's dad situation, find out the next year that he potentially has other kids with other girls around here now that are younger than Laela. Don't know if that's true. The lease for our place in Hawaii was about like 6 months. So December of 2020, we were deciding whether we were gonna stay or not. There was honestly like a whole bunch of weird drama happening in Hawaii at the end of our stay. We had like friends coming to visit all the time, and Logan's brother had come to stay with us, and it was just like, for some reason, all this drama was like happening. It was just like really chaotic, but we kind of missed being home, like close to our families and our friends, and I missed Delaware a lot. And then the island is also pretty small, so we kind of started to feel like we had seen everything we wanted to see, and we just wanted to be close to family and like have help with the kids again. We moved back home to Delaware, find a rental here, and we kind of start being close with our friends again. And then pretty shortly after we moved back, I got pregnant with Millie. At this time, I had been on birth control for a little while, and I decided that I wanted to get off of it just for like personal reasons. I wanted to like have a normal, natural hormone cycle again, and just like, and I just don't like, I guess, like how I feel when I am on birth control. Like, I'd rather, like I said, be in like a normal, natural hormonal cycle, which is just like a personal preference. And obviously birth control is really important for people that are trying to prevent getting pregnant. I was trying to like learn how to track my cycle, and it got to a really good point where like my cycle was super regular. And then Logan decided one day that he wanted to have another baby without telling me, and then got me pregnant with Millie. Just kidding, that's not really how it happened, but I was at a good point of like really tracking my cycle. And I use this app that like you like log when you're on your period and log like your different symptoms and stuff, and it kind of like helps you know exactly like when you're ovulating and when it's like more risky or less risky to participate in activities. And there was literally one time that Logan had an accident. And that accident is named Millie-Isla. Just kidding. I just joke about that because Logan freaked out when I got pregnant with Millie, and he was like so stressed out and like throwing up and like so upset. And that made me so sad because I obviously was the one that was like on top of tracking my cycle. Thank God for Millie-Isla because I love her so much. She's my little mini me, and I love her so much, and I'm so grateful that we have her. But I do hope for myself that one day, if I have a partner in the future and I want to have more kids in the future, that they will be excited to find out that I am pregnant. So anyways, at this point, we find out we're pregnant with Millie, and eventually Logan calms down and accepts reality. We decide, obviously, we're gonna hold off our wedding, because at that point we were talking about getting married that year in Delaware, but I did not want to get married while I was pregnant, so we decided to push off the wedding. And then at this point too, when we find out we're pregnant with Millie, we decide that we really wanted to lock in and buy a house here because we had been renting for so long. We had been looking at homes for a long time, but we knew that we had to have like a few years of credit history and income history to be able to buy a house. Literally, as soon as we were able to buy a house, we did, and I'm so grateful for that. And we used our savings to buy this home. Here's where things started to also get rough with Logan and I's relationship. There was still issues in our relationship, and I started to suspect that I was being cheated on. There was a time when I was pregnant that I found out that something had happened, and I just kind of started, yeah, to realize like I was being cheated on. But I was constantly being like reassured that that wasn't true, but it was true. So for a while I felt crazy because it like felt like I knew that it was happening, but like I was trying to be trusting. I had a lot of faith in Logan and I's relationship. Like, I really believed that we were gonna beat the odds and we were gonna make it work, and that there was just, you know, we were just waiting for, you know, like, oh, when the kids are older, it'll be easier, or like we were just waiting for something to happen to just make our relationship work. And we did try, like, we did couples therapy things together and try to work out our problems in healthy ways, and it just seemed like nothing was really doing it. And there was just too many things that had built up that I was unhappy about. So I knew in the back of my mind, like, I was scared that we were never really going to find peace and happiness in our relationship. But of course, I wanted to have a family, and I wanted my kids to have parents that were together. Anyways, so at this point, I'm towards the end of my pregnancy with Millie, and the night before I go into labor with Millie, I find out that my mom is having a baby as well. This time, my mom and I hadn't been in much contact because, like I had said before, she had tried to go to rehab, and there was always just stuff going on with her because of her addiction. Like, we were just, there was constantly always something that I would hear about, shit that she would get into, different men that she was with, and whatever. At this point, I hadn't been in contact with her for a long time, but she was living with my grandmother and my sisters again. I find out that she's having a baby, which was crazy because we knew that she was still using. She, I think, tried to hide it for a while, so we didn't find out until the end. So 2 months after I had Millie, she had my little brother. My birth with Millie was incredible. It was fall. I owned this home that I was bringing my baby home to for the first time, which was a great feeling. I felt so prepared for giving birth and like having a natural birth. So my birth experience with her was so beautiful, and I mean, all of mine were, but like I feel like especially the third time around, I felt so like in tune with myself and my body throughout the whole experience, and it was great. I did have some issues with the doctors that I had, but and then we just began adjusting to life with 3 daughters. And now I don't want to sound like I am only really talking negatively about my relationship with Logan. I just think that you guys have seen all of the beautiful parts of it because that's all that we shared, and it was beautiful, and we loved each other and created a beautiful life together and have been raising 3 amazing little girls together. I just am trying to make it make sense for you guys throughout the storyline why we ended up breaking up, and like the issues that we had that I didn't share about. He's a really good dad. Postpartum after I had Millie was a little bit hard for me. I definitely went through a little bit of like postpartum depression and struggled a little bit, and I feel like my body also just changed a lot. I mean, I went through 3 pregnancies within like only a couple of years, and I was so young, so my body was just like constantly changing, and I feel like that was hard for me. And I was so sick with my pregnancy with Analia, and I was barely able to eat, so I feel like I just like ate so much more when I was pregnant with Millie that I like gained more weight and was kind of self-conscious about that. So Millie was born at the end of 2021, and then my little brother was born at the beginning of 2022. He was born right before I turned 21. So when he was born born addicted to drugs. I've done a lot of videos about him and that whole situation here as well, but he was born addicted, had to go into the NICU for a while, and the night that he came home from the hospital, I made sure to be there because I didn't know what it was going to be like, and I didn't want the responsibility of a now medically fragile newborn on my grandmother. And it honestly was way worse than I even expected it was going to be. My mom was completely unable to take care of him and was on drugs. So it was very sad, and especially as a mom, and like I had a newborn at the time, and I was still like in newborn mom phase. It was just extremely hard to see and so sad. So I ended up taking care of him that night because she kind of left him with me. So I called my family and let them know what was going on, and then some family came out to help, and we have now been fighting to get him out of foster care for over 2 years now. And I've always felt like I should take him. Like for the last couple of years, I felt like maybe I should just like take him in, but it's been such a long process, and even my other relatives that are also out of state have been unable to like get them to permanently place him with a family member, and that's just been a whole other thing. So yeah, I turned 21, and at that point I felt like I had just been through so much stuff and had so much like unaddressed trauma. Just like coming back with like my mom and seeing her again in the state that she was in, just like my postpartum depression and just like all of that stuff, it just felt like things were piling up, and my relationship felt like it wasn't working, which was all just like internal, whereas like on the outside I was happy and it seemed like my life was great, and I had this home and my girls were all healthy and happy, and like I tried to just like stay positive all the time throughout everything. That's like always how I've been, but realistically things still were just boiling up inside of me, all of these things compounding with these struggles that I had gone through and didn't really like address or like know how to cope with. So when I turned 21, I started going out with my friends, and I also had a lot of new mom friends at the time, because now that I had been getting older, there was more like girls my age that were also having kids. When I was 16, that wasn't really a thing yet. Yeah, and at this point in my relationship, I also still like knew that I was being cheated on, or like really suspected that I was being cheated on, and this was still like a struggle in my relationship. And I literally would like ask about it because it was like pretty obvious that it was happening, and was lied to over and over again. After everything happened with my little brother and he went into foster care and all of that, I talked to my grandma about moving out to Delaware. She talked about wanting to retire here. She was still raising my little sisters and still working. So we kind of convinced her, like, retire, sell your house, and move out here, get away from my mom and her problems. Logan and I, with all the kids, went and helped her move out of the home that I grew up in out in Maryland and find a place to rent out here, and I am so happy that her and my sisters live out here now. It really feels like so good to have them close here again, especially after going through this breakup last year. Like, being able to like lean on them for support and have them here with me also just like has been so great. And I felt like I always felt like stressed out and sad about like what could be happening there with like my mom and like my sisters and what they were witnessing out there. My sister would like call me all the time, just like really sad and feeling unsafe there, and I'm just really glad that like they're here now. Anyways, also at this point, like, there's so much going on, and then like also with the stuff constantly going on with my family, like still that was another thing that kind of put our relationship to the side, and like the issues that we would have to the side. Around this point too, I'm like still continuing to realize that I'm like done with the relationship, like, and especially as Millie's getting older and I'm like out of the like pregnancy and newborn hormone stages. Like, as Millie's getting older, I'm starting to really see like that I'm not just like hormonal and emotional, and that these issues are like real. But our everyday life was really just raising our 3 kids and making our content together and taking care of our home, and I'm like so grateful that we got to both be home with the kids, even though I think that maybe did lead to a little bit of our like struggles in our relationship, is like the dynamic was never really clear. Like, we were both kind of working stay-at-home parents, but it's always kind of been more like my YouTube channel and my content, and then like he didn't really know what he wanted to do, and that was always kind of an issue. And he always had like ideas on like things that he wanted to pursue himself, and like nothing really ever moved forward things that he wanted to do. Anyways, spring of 2023 comes around. We went on a trip to Mexico together, and we got in a huge fight on the end of that trip. It was just one of the final straws, I guess, where I just realized like this is supposed to be like a great like thing for our relationship, to like have alone time after we had like our most recent baby, and then it ended up like we ended up having this big blow up fight, and I was really sad. I was really like in denial of the fact that I was done, but I knew I was done, and I just didn't know what to do with those feelings, because I knew I wanted to have a family and all of that, and I didn't want us to have to break up or how that would even go. At this point, I was checked out, and somebody tried making a move on me when I was out one night. And of course I like shut that down, but that had never like happened to me. Somebody that like knew I had kids and all of that stuff, and it meant obviously nothing, and this person was obviously so disgusting and disrespectful for doing that, considering they knew that I am in a relationship and have kids and all of that. That was like disgusting and awful. But at the time, I feel like it sort of opened up the idea of anybody else being interested in me. And I didn't cheat on Logan, but I did entertain continuing to interact with this person. And in a way, it felt like I was mentally like cheating, I guess, because I was now thinking about the idea of anybody else being interested in me. And I talked with this person for like a few weeks, and it was very just like casual. They just were like, oh, I'm so sorry for doing that. That was so messed up. Let's just be friends, blah, blah, blah. I just continued to entertain it. Meanwhile, I also knew that I was being cheated on. And after all of the like mental and emotional abuse that went on in our relationship, I was just checked out and done. And I felt like I wanted some kind of out. Like, it was like I was like forcing some kind of out without having to just like break up. Obviously, I so heavily regret the relationship ending like this. Once I kind of started to realize like what was happening in my head because of just me like entertaining this idea of just like not being with Logan, I guess, or being with anyone else. I brought it up to him and there was a big blow up breakup the spring of 2023. Genuinely, to me, the breakup didn't actually have anything to do with this. I think that's just like what I almost used to trigger it happening. The blow up breakup really confirmed for me that I knew I was done. And that Logan really needed to work on himself a lot. I also did too, of course. Right after we broke up, I went to Hawaii to see my family, and I kind of told them all everything that had happened and all of the problems in our relationship. They always kind of knew and could tell that there was problems. They were just there and ready to support me with whatever I needed. And then that summer was just a lot of learning how to co-parent, coping and processing with the breakup, and accepting the reality of the things in our relationship that were so bad but I didn't want to accept were so bad. It wasn't until after we broke up that it was finally confirmed for me by both parties that I was being cheated on for 2 years of our relationship and lied to about it. And that kind of really helped me make sense of why I was feeling the way I was feeling and did what I did. I knew it and it was so in my face the whole time, but it was like he was just denying it. I guess I'm kind of glad that I found out after we broke up, because I feel like I was already more detached and ready to move on, and that just helped me move on. But yeah, it was very disappointing still, and shocking and traumatizing, and I'm sure I'm going to have trust issues for the rest of my life in relationships and friendships. I started just going out with my friends when I could, trying to meet other guys, and then also that summer, which was last summer, I get a call from Laela's dad, and I found out that he was in jail. So that was also an interesting thing that happened last summer. I don't really know much about his whereabouts now, but I did find that out last summer, and we talked on the phone a few times for the first time in years, and I got to tell him a little bit about Laela. And I don't really know if he has any interest in like getting his life together to be able to be in her life. Laela has also started to have a lot more interest in like the fact that she does have a different dad out there, and she's asked about him a lot more and has more interest in meeting him. I don't really know much about his situation. At this point though, as much as the breakup was like rough and it was like I felt like a deer in headlights for months because it felt like my whole life was falling apart, I also began to feel a lot like happier and more confident in myself. I got to like learn more about myself now being out of this relationship that I was unhappy in. It was a lot to adjust being a single mom. I'm the one staying in the house and raising the kids, and Logan was like staying with some friends and working. So it was mostly me taking on the responsibility of everything with the kids, and that was overwhelming, but it's of course what I wanted. But it was still a big transition. Now I feel a lot like more stable and better in it after like a year of figuring it out, but you know, at the time it was like a lot. And also Millie, my youngest, is like getting older, and as she's getting older things get easier because she's just been like at an easier, more independent age. Not to say that her twos haven't been a little bit terrible. A couple of months after the breakup, I started seeing somebody else who had been a friend of mine for a while. We dated on and off for like the last year. It was just very calm and peaceful for me, and regardless of our relationship, he was just a very good friend for me throughout the whole transition for me becoming a single mom and everything. Yeah, throughout the summer, learning to co-parent was pretty hard, and trying to figure out what our relationship was hard because like we didn't know, and still it's kind of hard to figure out like how much we should be friends, and I don't know. There still is always going to be the lingering like things from our past that make it hard to just like be friends, but we've gotten to a great point of being able to like communicate and be civil and co-parent, and it's great. There has been times that I've been disappointed or let down, or that there's been inconsistency. Obviously, like I said, I stayed here and I'm still doing YouTube and have the house and I've been raising the kids and have a lot of help from my grandma and his mom and everything. He moved away and is trying to kind of reestablish his life. It's taken a lot of patience and accommodation since he's been living further away, and I know that he is putting in a lot of effort to make it work and kind of just figure out and reestablish his own life. Last fall, Laela started kindergarten, so She has been in school, and at the end of last summer, just with everything happening with our breakup and it all just feeling so overwhelming, I decided to move in with my grandma, who had just moved out here back in the beginning of 2022. So I decided to move in with her, and Laela started kindergarten and she was going to school. My little sister was also in elementary school, so they were able to ride the bus together, and Laela loved school and did so well this year, and I'm so proud of her and cannot believe that she's about to be done with kindergarten. But yeah, I just felt like with so much change happening and her starting school that I needed to lean on the support of my family that I had here. So we started living with them, but I still had my house here, and I just started renting out rooms to a couple of friends. I would still spend some time here and they were just renting rooms for me. So that was really nice, and I feel like I really needed that to kind of like transition into single motherhood. But I did really miss having my own home, I guess, which did get hard. But again, I'm like really grateful that I had friends that were wanting to rent here and was able to stay with my grandmother, and I'm sure we're still going to be spending a lot of time there. She lives so close, and I love spending time there with her and with my little sisters, and we have dinner there like a lot of nights, and we're still kind of in the process of getting moved back in here because Laela is still finishing up school. I also kind of realized that like my whole property that I have is a lot to take care of, and I feel like we weren't really taking care of it to the fullest potential when Logan and I were living here with the girls. So I've started to just try to put more effort into taking good care of our home and getting just like work done around the yard and getting the driveway fixed up and like having the pool fixed up and everything, because all I want in life is to raise my kids in a beautiful home where they can learn and grow and play outside and be creative and messy and run around in the dirt. Fill the home with instruments and they can learn how to play. So that's where we are now. Earlier on I talked about my mom having another baby, and last month my mom actually just had another baby, and both of them are now in 2 different foster homes. On top of that, my mom is still living at my grandmother's house, my childhood home. My grandmother has been trying to get her to leave for 2 years now, and finally has decided to take it to court. My mom isn't like paying her to like live there. She's just basically squatting there. So that's just been another thing we've been trying to deal with, because I just really want my grandma to be able to have a peaceful, happy retirement here and not still be stressing about that. At some point, maybe this summer, at the end of the summer, we'll be able to sell her house and celebrate. Moving back into my house and just moving back in here with the girls myself has really felt like it's a new start for us. I've still been really into like making music. That's like my favorite hobby and like passion, and I really love doing it, playing my ukulele, and I play the piano a little bit, and I really want to teach the girls that and be able to like record and put out music because it's just something that I'm really passionate about and love doing. It is really hard. So that's basically my whole life story, and now for my future and just like upcoming recent things. We just have this summer coming up, and I really want to like travel maybe a little with the girls and do a bunch of fun stuff this summer. I have some friends coming to visit. I'm just really excited to have Laela back out of school and have her all the time again. I feel like I like miss her a lot when she's in school and I don't get to spend as much time with her. And also on the weekends she'll be like with Logan and Logan's family. So yeah, I'm excited for her to be done with school. And of course we want to spend a lot of time at the beach and just in our pool. I just have so many goals and like dreams for just how I want to live my life with the girls and just like our health and our lifestyles and all of that. And I really want to get them into like more activities, like things that I did as a kid. I'm just really grateful that I've been able to spend my kids like younger years being able to be home with them. I would in the future like to maybe go to college or pursue other things, but I'm just really grateful that while my kids are still so young that I'm able to just be home with them and create content for a living, and it's been amazing. Millie is only 2, so maybe when she gets a little bit closer to being in school, or at least Anna is also in school, which will be next fall, not this upcoming fall, but the next one, I'll have more time to maybe like pursue other stuff. I also do see myself moving back to Hawaii one day, or at least part-time, especially because my cousins also moved out there. So I do see that in our future, either spending some parts of the year there or, I don't know, moving back for a little bit or whatever. I feel like over this past year, I've just learned so much about myself and grown so much and learned so much about what I want out of a relationship if I'm going to be in a relationship. I have kids, and while I don't need to have somebody that raises my kids with me, if I'm going to be putting my time and energy into a relationship, my standards have to be high because I put all of my time and energy into my kids. I would hope that one day I can be with somebody that cares about me and cares about my kids, even if they're not necessarily raising them with me. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I hope you guys enjoyed getting to hear the full rundown timeline of my life and what I hope for my future and all of that. Don't forget to check out my other socials down below and also my Patreon. I'm still doing my Patreon podcast. Twice a month I post on my Patreon podcast episode, and then like little things here and there in between. Love you guys so much. You guys are like my second family and have now been here with me, a lot of you guys, for 6 years. If you guys come out to Delaware in the summer, please let me know. I love like getting to meet you guys out. I feel like I've met so many of you guys out like at the boardwalk and in Dewey and all of that stuff. For anyone who comes out to the Delaware beaches, I will see you in my next video. Bye.